Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. I hope you're all doing well in these very strange times of lockdown and not being allowed out and not being allowed into chat rooms to molest children. Not that that's what we're into, of course, but certain people that we're interested in are. Two people who oppose such behaviours, one would certainly think so, is two very good friends of mine, is Mr. Shin's koala, who has just felt the full wrath of Tiffany Lockhart because he's just been preempted with a very stern warning of no technical fuck-ups on this occasion. How are you feeling from that onslaught of anger and oppression, Mr. Koala?
I'm a better man for it, really. I mean, I really needed that. I needed
Well,
to
it
take
didn't
a
work with
nap.
Lorne. He's saying it's worked with you.
Yeah, yeah. But I got to tell you, I truly am trying to be the man she wants me to be. So
I
Aw.
don't know
whatever
if
it
that's
takes.
possible.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, so do you feel like you've got a lot off your chest there, Tiffany, with having that rage at Shin?
Yes, I think we might be prepared. The gum and cough drops, lollipops, anything like that is supposed to be all the way across the room. So we'll see how long that lasts.
She
Did you
made
make
me
sure there
do
was
all
no
that stuff.
basketballs in
I
reach,
did.
though?
Yeah, she actually physically relocated things in my immediate surroundings and
Yeah,
and required evidence of it. So
yeah,
yeah, I did good.
I'm
I did good.
helping.
Yeah.
And we're on time as well, more or less. Only a couple of minutes late, which is unusual. Usually I'm late, or something's gone wrong, or there's some kind of technical issue. So let's try and have a fun look at this monstrosity of a collection of words and
Do you want to remind
misspells.
him of what this exercise we're doing, Andrew, is? Basically going back to the organic stuff and taking what we know today and applying it. That's pretty much it. I did it. Sorry.
Well, why don't you continue, good sir?
No, that's it. That's it. But just in case people didn't see one, two, and three, we always do a little recap like that, I guess.
Oh, of course. And I I've kind of been enjoying it, really. I think that we all have a good insight that's kind of a little bit unique on, we pick up on things that maybe the other person won't, and it is quite remarkable that after all this time we're still finding new insights into it. Do you know what's a bit weird? And I was thinking about this because every now and again, I'm pretty sure it must happen to you two guys. You take a step back and you think, what the fuck have I been doing my life obsessing about this guy? It's just some fuckwit from Maine. What is the big deal about him? It's just a chat log written by a quite unintelligent pervert. What the fuck are we doing? Spending all our time going over it and over it and over it. It's do you ever have those moments? Because
Oh my
I
God.
do.
Can you imagine what I've thought about?
I,
Yes.
well, yeah, big time.
I mean, hanging up the phone with said pervert.
He knows the
And
name of your
then,
dog.
well, no, he doesn't. He got that wrong.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time. And it's an interesting question. It's a very complicated answer, but it's always fun to ask. It's crazy.
Well, have you come up with any solution?
Well,
No, we're going to keep going.
I don't really look for I'm not sure what solution I'm looking for, but to me, it's like it's always there. I mean, for the last like 7 to 10 days, I've been crazy at work, and I hadn't really had enough time to really do what I normally do. But just the satisfaction, just the idea of knowing it was always there, and he was never going to go anywhere, was always kind of like a good go-to place to go. And but lately, it's funny because I have different attitudes about him. It always shifts, in spans of time. Like just recently, within the last 10 days or so, I've been laughing at everything he's been saying, everything he's been doing, even things that aren't funny. Just knowing everything about him. That's kind of the mood I'm in. Before that, I was in I hate this guy so much. Yeah, I can't wait till he gets back to prison and what a piece of shit and all that. And that was kind of like a little more difficulty in that point, a little more distracting with real life things. But I'm in a good place right now with him, so I'm good.
Good.
I agree. I mean, I have various moods when it comes to him and whatnot. I know I shouldn't, but every now and again I feel sorry for him because my views on the sort of human spirit and psychology about it is very different than a lot of people's. I don't believe that anybody is consciously a bad person. I think it's a combination of very poor choices, very poor upbringing, your surroundings, the culture, oppression. It's a combination of things, and every now and again you think, well, I always think back to when he was a little boy, like I knew him, But what I mean is, like, when you're a kid and before you start developing a mind, no little boy wants to be a bad person. It's that's the way I always try and view it. It's very different when I have to deal with somebody in my life which is difficult and I consider them bad. You don't think like that. Your initial reaction is one of the ego, which is that person's an arsehole, which of course from one perspective it's true, but you have to also, I do believe what I've said. I don't believe that he's inherently evil, but from the same point of view, everybody has a responsibility in life to be a good person and be a functioning member of society, and it's difficult to do that. It isn't easy, because if it was easy, there'd be no fucking point to anything.
Can you at least? I know that your stance on evil and whatnot, but you would definitely concede that he's an evil doer, right?
Oh, of
I
course.
mean, you want to make that. You want to make that clear.
Of course. Okay. I mean, I'm not. I'd never say, it'd be silly to say, I don't. I think we can all agree there's nothing worse than what he tried to do than child molestation. I can't think of anything that would be more. It just baffles me that people do that kind of stuff. It really is quite frightening. But there is another element to it of the Lorne thing. It's that his emotional intelligence is one of a child. That's quite obvious. He thinks like a child in a lot of ways. He can kind of relate to them in that degree. I'm not saying that that's the reason he went for it, but you get somebody like, I don't know, the doctor, Maurice Woolen. He just did it because he's a dirty pervert. Of course, Lorne is as well. But I believe there's a little bit more to it in Lorne's case. Like, he said himself during one of the calls, I can't remember which one it was or who he was talking to. And obviously this doesn't mean it's the truth because it's come from his fucking lips. But he said that, he did say once, I don't know if it's something you remember, Tiffany, is that he didn't think he could get anybody his own age, and that's why he went after
anybody decent his own age. Anybody decent his own age. Is
that
actually what he said?
Very specific quote. Yeah.
Did he say that to you, Tiff?
I believe so. I think
it was you, Tiff.
Yeah, I think when being asked, why is it that you were speaking to your victims like this, and thinking that you had, that you were having some type of a relationship, that they were special. What made them special? And yeah, he mentioned that. I think to go along the lines with what you were saying, everybody has the responsibility to do good, and that doesn't matter what has happened in the past. There's going to come a certain point when you have to do better. And he's never been able to do that. He's never been able to take responsibility. So even though I'm sure shitty things have happened to him, I'm sure he didn't have the best upbringing. I'm sure that it was very chaotic. I'm sure that emotionally he was left behind, so to speak. He wasn't getting the attention that he was seeking. And so, that's the reason why he is so desperate for it today. But through maturity, that's what maturity is going past that. And you are ultimately responsible for what happens next.
It's learning from your experiences, which is the biggest, I think, definition of it.
Absolutely.
Of maturity. You have to have age in order to have experiences. So it goes hand in hand. I think his biggest issue is that he has absolutely no awareness or appreciation of consequences of his actions and impulses. I think he does
Is that not a handicap, though?
Not to the no. You know, he just for some reason he has a vague idea, you know, that it's wrong. He can get caught. You know, you could see him doing things like trying to get around rules. You know, drinking when probation's not. He knows it's wrong, but he has no idea of the bigger picture. He has no idea of what it's doing to him as a human being. You know, I mean, he grew up in a very desolate place. You know, his ideas and weren't really challenged or anything like that. And also, my guess is he didn't have to deal with a lot of consequences because a lot of, you know, maybe the family shared those same principles and values and things like that. So I don't think he's ever been conditioned to the idea that he can be held accountable for his own actions. And I think that's where the disconnect is with him and a normal human being. And it has a lot to do with his family. I think it has a lot to do with, again, you got to remember his world, as far as we know, the information we have is that his home, his school, that's it. And in between was 50 miles maybe, you know, so you got to kind of put it in that context. I do, at least, when I try to evaluate.
That's really interesting what you've said there, and I agree with that. It goes hand in hand with what I was going to sort of bring up, is that it goes in tandem with what you say about it being criminally insane. He doesn't know how to make the right. Well, it's not that he doesn't know; it's that in his current state, in his current mental state, he can't make the right decisions, because the human condition is that we always seek pleasure with the least amount of energy. It's ingrained into our very nature.
Sure, you get something for nothing.
Yeah, and he does that. It's the same with food. It's why we're attracted to junk food. It's got high calorie content for low, and it's why so many people are obese. Food like high sugar food, high calories, because we're designed to seek out
instant gratification,
high calorie foods with the lowest amount of energy, so that we can survive. And it's the same for worldly pleasures, like, you know, females and whatever your inclination might be. But he thinks like, but as we get older, we realise that the things in life that make it worth living are the harder things. So not everything that comes easily. So in order to be of use, you have to work hard and you have to be a good person. But it's complicated, because being a good person is a human value judgment system that we invented. And sometimes you have to be harsh to be kind to someone. So you have to then learn about integrity.
Nick Lowe, cruel to be kind.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's something that you gain from wisdom and experience and fucking up and hanging out with the wrong people and doing the wrong things. And he's never really done that, has he? I mean, he's done all the wrong things, but he's never learned a shred from any of it. And
no, he just when he's confronted with the real world, he gets brushed back into his hole, back into that remote area that he lives in. But one thing that strikes me about what Tiffany was talking about with him was explaining to him what character was, and how character is defined by who you are when no one's looking. His whole life, no one's looking. So everything, he doesn't really have a separation. So I can imagine that has something to do with his isolation, his loneliness, his rejection, all that other stuff left him on his own, you know, to be that person. And that character was built on everything he did that was bad. And so it's almost like he never gave himself a chance. And I think pride had something to do with it. I think jealousy had a lot to do with it. A lot of like these bad personality traits that just put him, that he followed those impulses and put him on this road. So
I think one of the things that Lorne thinks about quite often, and is sort of the foundation of the way that he grew up in his thought process, I think that he feels different, but he doesn't know why. And I think that's the reason why he's constantly bringing up Well, no one else does this, or
Yeah.
everyone else, can do this. And he was really separated from his brothers and his sister. They didn't treat him as an equal at all. Talking
But he makes
about,
it sound like it's their fault, though.
well, absolutely, but he doesn't know why, because he doesn't
Yeah.
understand, what makes him different. Also, the, the the whole incident where he was playing basketball and then he decided not to, he lost all of his friends. Whether or not that was exactly the reason, or if he truly had these friends, or if they were just teammates or whatever. But he was by himself, and that was the reason why he quit high school initially in his senior year. He wasn't going to graduate. And it had to do with people were, he says he wasn't interested in being around those types of people, whatever. But, he really does feel different, and he doesn't know why. I think that's the reason why he seeks out this ultimate acceptance, wanting to be a country music star where everybody loves you. And also, talking about his mom and how he has this ultimate love for his mom, even though we know that that's not true. But I do think that he feels different. He doesn't know why. And I think that's why he's been unsuccessful in relationships, because even when he was interested in someone, he gets pushed aside.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting hearing you say that, Tiffany, because you understand him very well, as one would certainly hope you do, with the amount of time you've bore the brunt of speaking to him. It kind of like, does what you're saying not make you realise that he doesn't really have free will in the way that we do?
No,
it's very easy
doesn't.
for us to. Sorry to interrupt. It's very easy for us to stand above him and say you're making the wrong decisions, which of course he did, and say you knew better, you can do better. When really, given his current state of mind and everything else, he doesn't know. He does know how to do better from one perspective, but doesn't from another. Do you understand what I'm saying?
He's a creature of impulse. He's a creature of impulse.
Well, that's really the thing, is that he does know. If he didn't know better, then he would have walked into the Kayla situation. He would have walked into all the other situations with his victims as if nothing was wrong. When Chris Hansen walked out, he would have said, yeah, I'm here. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
But he said, this is what I was afraid of. He knows exactly what he's doing.
He knows it's legally wrong. He knows he shouldn't be doing it.
Right. And so why isn't that enough?
It is enough.
But
I'm not saying.
But what he's afraid of, how much thought did he actually give to what he was afraid of?
A lot.
You think so?
Absolutely. Because all of the moves that he was making during this chat was setting it up so that didn't happen.
Yeah, but I think he was more afraid of Kayla not being real.
No, I don't think so.
Was it getting arrested?
I really don't think so. Because even in this, he's talking about going to jail. He's talking about people wouldn't think this is normal. Yeah. So he knows exactly. He was afraid. That's why, when he's talking about where he drove past the house and turned around, he was checking it out. He makes it sound like this is a hesitation on his part, but it wasn't.
Yeah. He was looking. He had to stop. You could see where he stopped, and he was looking in directions. He's looking all around. Camera zooms in nice on that shot. Right. But at the same time, he didn't think Chris was a cop either.
But no, he didn't know who he was. I'm assuming that he would think. I don't think he would have thought that this was a father, because I think a father walking out, not knowing who this man is, I don't think that he would have been.
No, but you're
calm.
giving him credit for having intelligence there, and I believe him when he says he didn't exactly know who he was at first, because he just
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
Well, what I was saying was he didn't know who Chris Hansen was personally, saying that's Chris Hansen.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
But I don't think that first of all, it is difficult to say exactly what he was.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Because I think at that moment, seeing any kind of an adult, whether it was a woman, would have freaked him out.
He was scared. Definitely scared more than.
Sure.
Yeah. Definitely scared. Definitely scared more than hurt.
Yeah, definitely. But there was no. I'm certainly not giving him any credit for any intelligence. He is very stupid, but he also is trying to manipulate reality so that it suits his needs, and that's why he was going through all of the steps that he was going to make sure that he wasn't going to get caught.
By rewriting history, yeah. Well, speaking of what? Sorry, Andy. Go ahead.
No, of course, everything that you say, I agree with. It's like I can't. It's very difficult for me to articulate what I'm saying. I'm not saying I know better than anybody else. I do a lot of reading about behavior and pattern behaviors and the psychology of the way we behave and the way we think and our past influences on parental relationships and all kinds of. I read as much as I possibly can about the human psyche, spirituality. It really fascinates me. Do we have free will? It's been philosophized, if that is a word I've just made up, forever. And even now there's no common agreement within very intelligent social scientists. Some will say there is free will and some will say that there isn't. Eckhart Tolle said it in a recent post because he's been doing videos, and he just said that there is no free will without the awareness, the total awareness. Now, Lorne does have awareness that what he's doing is wrong, but he isn't aware fully that what he is doing is detrimental to himself, because if he did, he wouldn't do it. Now, Erodo has just said don't make excuses for him. I'm not making excuses for him. You have to understand and grasp what I'm trying to say here. I'm someone who says that he should be locked up forever, and I still believe that. So, of course, I'm not making excuses for him. Trust me, I know what I'm fucking talking about. But I also try my very best to go as deep as possible. And some people don't like it, I understand. And try and understand the very nature of why people like him behave like they do. I can't find the ultimate answer, because to do so is beyond what we're capable of in the human mind. We're talking about consciousness, and I
don't take it as you defending him. I take it as you defending the human race, and unfortunately we got to account for him, and I'm doing my best to explain that we're still good despite him, and he can be good. He could be one of us, so don't destroy us all, that kind of thing. I mean, I read that. I mean, I know you have absolutely no love lost with this guy at all. But it's worth understanding where he's coming from, but it in no way justifies or excuses what he does.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Thanks, and it just, at the end of the day, yes, someone's just put, is it, but for Lorne, I'm just like, well, Lorne's still a human being. We don't like to admit it because we don't want to have anything common with this guy, but we're all part of the human race, and we have to understand the lower parts of us if we have to get better. We can't just line all the bad people up and shoot them, because if we do, they'll keep coming. They're not going anywhere. We have to understand what it is that makes these people like it they are, and not just dismiss them out of hand and say, right, that person's evil, let's shoot him.
I believe that, though, Andrew. I sorry, but that's where you and I differ, though. I think there are people that are clearly evil.
Oh no, of course.
What I'm saying, there was some soldiers' diaries, U.S. soldiers, when they entered the concentration camps to liberate the prisoners. One wrote, "This is I never believed this before in my life, but now I realize there is a demarcation between good and evil in this world," and that's true. Whether they're people or acts or whatever they are, you have to recognize that. And there are some people that are beyond redemption. There's no question about it. And I think pedophilia 100%. Is one of them. And the question is, what do you do with them? That's certainly a consideration. But I do believe that the consciousness of what they're doing, the grooming, the premeditation, and all that other stuff makes them an evil person. That's me. That's my view.
I completely agree. There are some people, I've always come from the stance that whatever it takes to protect the innocent should be done. So in other words, if it means death to a predator or an offender, then they should be, it's like self-defense, isn't it? If someone comes at you, you kill them. They deserve
Well,
to die. You're the innocent. You know, let you
just taken out of
without
society. Just taken
yeah,
out of society.
yeah.
Whether you want to kill them or put them on an island or whatever you want to do, they don't have a right to walk among us. They don't have a right. We have a duty to get rid of them, to protect all of us. That's that, and the reason why this particular thing, crime or pathology, whatever you want to call it, so dangerous because there's no cure. And the impulse runs through physical health. Hambubber couldn't get it up anymore, but he was willing to use his tongue. What do we do? Cut off his tongue? Do we start cutting off their hands? They'll use some instrument to satisfy that impulse, and you've got to pluck them out of society. And at least tag the ones that you may. I mean, unfortunately, that's a reality in my view. I don't want to take a chance with these guys. So,
of course, like I said, it's difficult for me to articulate where I'm coming from because it runs the risk of people thinking that I'm enabling that kind of behaviour, and some people in the chat have pointed to that. So, to sort of put forward my perspective, it can be a bit tricky because as well with the subject matter,
yeah,
it's rightfully gets people very upset because it ruins people's lives. It's like, we have these kind of discussions sometimes, don't we, Tiffany, about the deeper aspects, and we don't agree, do we, generally?
Generally, we don't.
No, but we don't, we discuss it, and that's it. There's no falling out. There's no like, oh, you're full of shit. It's just, right, okay, we don't agree, that's it. Because it's a very complicated issue. This stuff has been talked about for thousands of years, good versus evil. And what do you do, and how do you fight it? And that's why I'm a fan of, and I'm going very lowbrow here, but that's why I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. I know it sounds a bit silly, but you've got this race of superior monk-like beings that wield this sword that only do it for the right of for the good of the galaxy, and then you've got these fucking super hard evil Sith creatures that run around killing people. It's fascinating to me,
yeah.
That's what I love about it. But
Andrew, you should get into. I've been recently getting into Alien Covenant with the engineers. Are you familiar with that? Anybody in the chat? It's pretty cool. It deals with the Aliens franchise to Prometheus. Those are the prequels to it, and it's all about discovering the origins of man. And in any event, you should check it out.
I saw Prometheus. Yeah, it was a bit. And then there was the Covenant one. That was the most recent one. Yeah, it was about the origins of our species. It was pretty good.
Yeah, where we thought Yeah, exactly. We thought the engineers made us, and then there's alpha engineers that made them, and it's kind of interesting. And they sent their emissary 2,000 years ago when we killed him, being Christ.
Yeah.
And that, things like that. It's pretty interesting stuff. But
it is, and we've been talking for 30 minutes, and we've not even gone into the chat log yet, which is cool.
Speaking of evil.
Yeah, so I think we'll get cracking, actually. Let me just let me know if you can see the chat log okay. I don't want to I think that's pretty good, actually. I don't think it's cut anything off, so we'll just get cracking. Now, we were up to... in fact, what we'll do, we'll have a full stream, because we've just done 30 minutes on kind of the really deep philosophical stuff and Lorne's awareness. I think we'll do a full stream on that at some point. It's going to be tough, because it's going to stir a lot of emotions, and there's going to be the usual amount of healthy criticism coming my way, but that's fine. That's what it's all about, I'm quite...
No, I think it's clarification more than anything.
Well,
I don't think you're debating anyone.
I'm comfortable
really.
in my own viewpoint to take a bit.
Yeah.
It's not a problem. But anyway, so I think we was up to the bit I've highlighted, which is so promise me you will never. And it happens quite a lot in the chat log where he shouts. Why to emphasise his point, which is nothing new, but it happens at some amusing time. So I mean, there's nothing more to this really than, never give anyone your information. It's just a simple case of him trying to.
Well,
He's the knight in shining armor, basically, isn't he? And he's
yeah,
playing the part of the protective uncle.
yeah, but I think the significance of this is that he's only been talking to her for an hour.
Yeah.
I think, right? Isn't I think it's about 9:30 or so, and
Yeah, I think
suddenly,
it's just over an hour.
yeah, suddenly he's making her make promises. It's weird. It's like he moved fast. I always wondered where that threshold was where Lorne was deemed to be in a relationship with someone. And I have a feeling it has something to do with as soon as he shows them a naked picture of them and they accept it. And that's kind of like the Tiffany could speak to this more. I don't know how you guys ended up consummating your relationship or declaring it or whatever you want to call it. But it just seems to me that every time he sends the naked pictures, that appears and they accept it and they don't say anything like, "Oh, this is disgusting, stay away from me," or whatever. He's kind of set himself up as in a de facto relationship. And I think
that's pretty much what it is. I mean, even before that point, it can be very much like wanting to know about the other guys around. Are you involved with anybody? And, if the answer is no, I'm not.
Yeah.
There's no other guys around. But then someone does come around and somebody makes mention, then the conversation happens of like, oh, who is that? Why are you talking to them? You must really like me. That type of thing. And so it's really just a matter of, like you said, like a de facto relationship. And if you don't say no, then it is.
Yeah. And suddenly, conditions start to be part of it.
Oh, yeah.
His jealousy starts to be acceptable. It's all based on, making him feel secure, all this other stuff. But, there's never a time when he says, "Will you be my girlfriend?" or "Will you be my woman?" or however he says it. It's always something that evolves. So he engineers a situation to create all this validation. And then makes a determination and conclusion that they're in a relationship and continues to validate that in those terms for the rest of the way.
But he's never had experience, as long as we know, probably never really, with a real relationship. So everything that we know about him is a fake relationship. His behaviour is all fake. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not behaving true to himself. But it does mean that he's never given boundaries. Like, for instance, the situation here is that he's is an obvious situation where he can't lose in this scenario. So everything that it's like it's his perfect playground, isn't it? Where who was it who said you Shin said it the other week, where he's allowed to run wild, basically, isn't it?
Actually, Tiffany said that.
Oh,
this
sorry.
is him in the wild.
Sorry, but
I'm not going to take credit for that.
I apologise. It's a great way of putting it, because of course that's what he's doing. It's his perfect playground here, isn't it? But with regard to him, and it's an interesting point what you bring up about what does he define as a relationship. I think it's anybody that gives him any time that will speak to him willingly.
And just to add on to that point too, we can look at the situation with Paula and what he has divulged about that. He said that they were in a relationship in his mind, because when he was asked, well, did she know that she was in this relationship with you? And he said, no, but in my mind we were. So he looks for a lot of cues from this other person, and believes that relationships follow this certain process in order for it to be established, and all of it is really in his mind. And he thinks that people should act, if they act a certain way, then it's kind of assumed that they are. And when it was, when that all fell apart, he has accused her for the next 20 years of being a slut and breaking his heart. But there was never anything that was there.
That is so fucking offensive.
Yeah.
It is just so, makes you want to punch him in the face.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So,
really.
sorry guys, but I setting up his own ugh. Anyway, okay. Now I'm in my I hate Lorne stretch. Now you took me out of he's funny. Now I'm
Oh no.
hating his guts. So anyway,
Yeah, well,
but
we're getting to the really
You're right,
bad stuff
Tiffany.
as well, so that's going to continue probably.
We'll find something funny. Let's find something funny. Let's get out of this.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we can't go too long. So, Kay, I promised never thank you, and then a rose, and then this. I find this quite an interesting comment. Are you happy you got to talk to me before anybody else? No, lol.
Mm-hmm.
Else before anyone else now. So he assumes he's first, which is good, and everyone else after him were rapists and murderers.
Pretty much, he's trying to affirm his position in her. You know, he's trying to affirm his position in a psyche that he is.
He's mixing two things. He's mixing two subjects. Are you happy that you didn't get raped and murdered? And are you happy that I saved you from it? He's mixing two things in it. He sets his own scenarios up, doesn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the other thing he's trying to do here too is by saying, are you happy you got to talk to me before anyone else? And then after that, he says, you'll also get some people that'll send you messages that will say dirty things in them too. So at this point, he hasn't done that yet. And so you can see just in the way that he's talking, of course, the lulls are in there. And she does a smiley face. So he says, that smiley face, does that mean you want them to? And then he says, yeah. And so he's kind of setting it up like, okay, if I haven't spoken to her sexually yet, so I'm still considered to be safe. I'm different from the other people in the chat room that could be doing that. So she's going to trust me. But now I also want to know, does she want to talk like that? Because I can do that too.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot packed in there.
Yeah, there is. It's pure. How sophisticated, Tiffany, do you think this is from a grooming perspective? Even though he can't lose at this point, it's quite clever for him, for his intelligence levels, or what with his ridiculous bashful nature and his bizarre fucking inability to process reality. He has a certain level of intelligence to do this kind of manipulation. He knows how to use scare tactics to his advantage. He knows how to test the water. He knows how to you know, like you say, he's like, oh, some people will send you dirty messages, and then he can slowly build up and test the water to the point where he can, and it's more manipulative, and it's worse than a lot of the predators who come out with it straight away, won't they? You know what perverted justice referred to as fast movers, and they'll just come out with it straight away. I want to do whatever I want to do, but with him, it's a very sinister plan of mental manipulation, isn't it? So how well do you attribute, if you were going to give a predator a score of manipulation tactics, where would you rate Lorne's?
It's definitely up there. You know, certainly we know at this point that this isn't his first time doing this,
right?
You know, and he comes from the angle of, you know, when he's talking about his other victims, he'll say they had a lot of problems. I was helping them. I was talking to them. And then it turns into a whole girlfriend thing. But that's sort of, he doesn't want to be seen as a predator. So he's not going to come right off like those other guys do, who are the fast movers, who are going to say, do you like anal, you know, to a 13-year-old in the second sentence. I think that for Lorne, he's doing it a little bit more in the sense that he is trying to establish himself as the nice guy, as, you know, the sheep in wolf's clothing, because he doesn't want this girl to be scared. He wants her to stick around. So his manipulation is on point. He thinks that Kayla is easy pickings. Like, he's not thinking that he's dealing with someone with high intelligence here. He is saying, what is a girl going to want in order for me to keep talking to her? She probably wants to feel safe. So you can talk to me. Don't talk to anyone else. But did you notice that they talk about some dirty things? Do you like that?
Yeah.
And so he's really trying to just figure out what is she thinking so that she'll stay. And whatever that is, then he'll stay too.
Yeah, I also think that there's a part of him that is surprised and excited by being surprised that so many gates that he had passed weren't shut in front of him. You
Yeah, I
know,
agree.
I think
Totally.
I
You
think
can
he
see it,
knows.
can't you?
Well, yeah, you can be. First of all, he's got really nothing to say. I mean, he's following everything. Everything is very visceral. Everything is not. There's nothing. There's no pattern to it or anything at all. But I think he's just surprised every time, like he does something, like he says something. You know, the rape thing, that she stayed on with him. You know,
Right. Yeah,
and that
sure.
was validation. Every time she does that, that's validation.
Exactly.
It doesn't take much. And
Yeah.
so he gets, again, for lack of a better term, he gets caught with his pants down to a certain extent on these things, and he starts getting really, really ham-handed and obvious, and his transparency is getting more and more visible. I mean, you're able to see him more now. So I think, you know, now his main job is to contain her and to keep her from anyone else. That's what he's going to be doing right now. That's just my opinion about this.
And then he goes on to say, because she says she's smiling, and she says, "Are you sure it's not because you think I'm cute? Do you have a crush on me?"
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Well,
he really, yeah. I mean, as far as like the emotional aspect of a relationship or what he thinks, as far as saying, "I'm your girlfriend, you're my boyfriend," type of a thing, he wants that to happen immediately.
Yeah. I mean, he goes from, if you go up a few lines, promise me you never give you. He goes from like a parental authority figure. I mean, kind of like a guardian,
Yeah, like
paternal figure.
the concerned uncle. He goes from that to finding out if she's attracted to him within the
Yeah.
space of 2-3 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, very fast mover.
And
But
I'd
so I
like to
would say,
say as well that when we're talking about his manipulation, when how good it is and that, do we think this would have worked? Let's just say Kayla was real. Right? I know it's a ridiculous scenario because it's like saying, I know, let's say the Jedi were real. It's ridiculous, but let's just say at this point Kayla's a real 13-year-old girl, and the character that she is real. So she's got 2 doctors, middle class, a little bit quiet, little personality. But you would certainly assume that she would have a degree of intelligence. 13-year-old girl, pretty at school, going to have had attention from boys, is going to know generally what boys are like. Will this have worked on a girl like that? I don't think it would have done.
Well,
this kind
first of all, Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on.
He doesn't know who he's dealing with yet. This is what he's trying to figure out. But ultimately, we know that Kayla, from what we can understand, she doesn't get a lot of attention. She has had a boyfriend, but boys aren't going crazy for her at school. We know her parents are sort of absent in the sense that they go on vacation. They don't tell her where they're going. They fight, so who knows really what Kayla was. If she were to be a real person. We do know that these types of tactics did work for him before because he has talked to real girls and they were of this age. And of course they were damaged, with his first victim. Absolutely.
Do you think, Tiffany, I've always wanted to ask you this question. Maybe I haven't, but do you think that his chats with the real victims were like this?
Yes, definitely. I think that, because since he's dealing with someone else, they're going to have more substantial things to say than this person. I think that they would have been giving him more. It would have been more conversational.
Yeah,
but I think that.
Yeah, exactly. Kayla was nothing. She was a brick wall. I don't know what he fell in love with, but she was just nothing. She was just a echo chamber. And the real victims had real lives. And he could have carried on a conversation with that instead of trying to carry on his own conversation like here.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as his moves were concerned, yes, I think they were very much the same. He talks about the only victim that or the first one that he has claimed, he said that she messaged him from being in a country music chat room. I don't believe that happened at all.
No.
I think that he could have been in a country music chat room, but he was also cruising to see who was around and may have been asking like, oh, what would you like to hear? You know, that type of a thing. But I don't think she went up to him and was like, oh my God, you're an amazing singer. Can you sing this for me? That's what he would love to hear.
Happened.
Yeah. I just don't think that it did. I think that he was the one making all of the moves.
I think we could assume that. Yeah, but I would really love to know how it happened, for the truth. You know,
I think you're seeing it as far as his process and the fact that he's going to kind of wonder about her, and you know, because she is a vulnerable person, that she is sticking around and she's talking to him, that he is going to do the same thing. I think he wanted to be a fast mover. I think he wanted to establish you know, emotions and some type of a relationship. Do you have a crush on me? Do you think I'm cute? I'm going to turn my cam on for you. Can you do the same for me? You know, that type of stuff. I think.
and you know, the thing is also, he always casts a wide net, you know, because we know about the other decoys that he attempted to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But he plays such a long game, and he's so inefficient. I mean, compared to him to somebody like Ice Truck Killer, you know, the first thing he says is, "Do you want to suck my dick?" You know, something like that. Or, "Can I rape you anally?" These guys get right to the point and move on so they can cover more ground. Lorne spends more time casting a wide net and spending too much time, you know, going through this weird grooming process.
Well, he's a coward, though, isn't he?
Well, that's because, again, absolutely. And again, he does not want to associate himself with those other people. You know, he will make mention of that. Those other guys that were on the show. These guys are in
just
the class.
interject. The other people, like, I can rape you anally and all those type of people.
Yeah, but Tiffany's right. He plays that. He plays them off each other. That's what Tiffany's right. He draws a contrast between them and him by not doing that, and making those the weirdos, making those guys, you know, the rapists and the murderers and everything that he protects her from. You're right.
Right.
So if he went into that like that, then he'd be one of them, and it would be hard for him to explain. So that's why he goes into Mr. Penis.
Right.
So I suppose, like, about the other predators, like, you know, what was the rape you anally guy called?
Michael Walker.
Yeah, that's right. They've kind of accepted themselves for what they are, haven't they? Obviously, with a fucking screen name like that. So
they're playing the numbers. They're playing the odds. Those guys. They just, you know, they got to move on if they don't find somebody who's interested right away. Lorne has to find out after an hour.
I mean, not that it makes them any better or any worse, but they kind of know what they're after. They've accepted it. They don't really care if it's right or wrong. It's like, right, I'm going to screw a kid. I'm going to get on with it. I'm going to make it quite clear. I'm going to, you know, like you said, find out straight away if they're interested. If they're not, move on to someone else. Whereas Lorne, like you were saying, Tiffany, at this point, hasn't really accepted what he is. Doesn't want to admit it to himself. So has to go about it in such a drawn-out, manipulative way. But is he in it? Because I have always got the sense, because he's in this playground of his where he can do what he wants, and he's having this conversation really with himself throughout the whole thing. I think that's why it's such an interesting document, because it really is his own mind and his own little playground. Did he he's kind of like fallen in love with his own perversions, and that's why he's kind of developed this bizarre affection for her? Because of course he didn't have feelings for her, because I don't think he's capable of having real feelings for anyone, but there were moments in the chat log where he almost got starry-eyed. He was like, I'm just thinking about laying down with you in the grass and stroking your hair.
You know, Erido, on that point, Erido makes a great point. She thinks that Lorne enjoys the grooming process just as much.
Yeah, I mean, that's
he savors it.
Definitely.
I agree with that 100%.
That's probably a better way of putting it, actually. I think he does enjoy it because it's the perfect... I think it's a way of him proving to himself that he's actually smart as well. That he's able to have power over another person. because he's never been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about anybody else, but when he went to visit the Sting house, and when he was off his normal medium of doing this, the comfort zone, I think he was out of his comfort zone. It just seemed to me like he was. He wasn't taking control like he does in the chat log, for instance. Casey took total control of him in that house, and he just went along with it. So I think the grooming process and hiding behind a keyboard and all of this other stuff is what's enjoyable for him.
It's the power thing, isn't it? They all say it's all related to power and control, and of course, it is. It can all go back to that primal kind of, instinct. And I think he enjoyed proving to himself that he thought he was intelligent, because what he was doing was working, or it appeared to be. He was getting all the responses that he wanted. He was getting that little endorphin rush. Like, oh my God, she's going for it. Oh my God, I'm getting my dick out and she's liking it. Oh my God, she's arranging to meet me. Oh my God, she's listening to all my pathetic drivel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and he can tell her to do things. He can tell her to hide a computer, to do this, that, and the other. He was in his total element, wasn't he? He's literally fucking, in his brain, jizzing everywhere. You know what I mean?
Well, ask yourself: again, take away all of the grossness of the chat log, all of the filth, everything that he does with a child. Take away that, and the person he was in that chat log. It's a legitimate question. Do you think he was that same person when he came to the to the Sting house? I think he was a totally different person.
I don't know what you mean.
What do you mean by that?
Putting aside all the filth, in the chat log and all the disgusting stuff, you don't expect him to go to the Sting house and do that. The personality he displayed in that chat log, was that the same personality that arrived at the Sting house, or were they different in your mind? I think they're different, totally different.
I think that initially. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just look at protective mechanism. There was no reason to be jealous, but there was no power that he was exerting. That's the biggest one over the chat log. He was in total power. He felt he had power, I should say, but he was. I felt like he looked like he was powerless when he went to the Sting house. So I'm just saying they're two different personalities. One in the chat log, one in person. So that's why it's so much easier for him to do this in writing behind a keyboard. But
I think to a certain extent there's going to be some apprehension on the part of someone arriving at a stranger's home, much less a child's home, where they don't really know what's going to happen. They think they do, but you can look at a perfect example is someone like Jeff Stacy, and Jimmy actually just mentioned it. I was thinking of him immediately because he was pretty crazy in the chat. He wanted her like on her bed with her legs open, and when he comes in, he's just kind of this like, okay, like really unsure of if he was even supposed to be there. I don't think he.
Hey, you're supposed to be practicing stretching your legs. What does that mean, by the way? Right. Practice stretching your legs. But I don't know. But you're right. But I'm not saying it's something that's unique to Lorne. I think it might be applicable to all these people. But Lorne, I think, is much more. The power dynamics are much more in his favor in the chat log than they are with limited time he had with Casey. Let's face it, we really didn't know where he was going, but he definitely did not seem like he was in control like he was in the chat log.
Well, I think, and Wes had mentioned this earlier, is that she was supposed to be waiting for him and getting immediately right into his truck.
Right.
She didn't do that. So she just was outside waving him in. And I think when he drove up there, and when he pulled up and when he got out of the truck, he was still the same person that he was in the chat log because he hadn't interacted with her yet. So there's going to be a ton of questions. Obviously, that is not the same person that he was talking to. Casey is totally different. And he, at that point, he doesn't know what to do. But up until then, he was the same guy. He was expecting to see his Kayla. He was expecting her to be really quiet, shy, like, you know, that he was going to have control of the situation just like he did there. But then when he's sitting down, he's talking to Casey, and Casey is just, you know, she's the one who's calling the shots. She's way more confident than what he was expecting. And you can see that he has this shyness about him, like even saying like, can I have a kiss first? And he looks away because he that to him is a really bold move. And he was afraid of what was going to happen there. But then he was also kind of like flirty, like, well, yell at me, why don't you? And, you know, he does that type of stuff. But that's why he was really trying to push for that kiss. And he kept asking for it. Can I have a kiss? Can I have a kiss first? Because at that point, if he would have gotten that kiss, he would have reverted their relationship back to the chat log
attitude. Yes. Andrew, this begs for us to get back to do the holy Lornography, which we haven't done yet. So we got to look at that at some point. But that'll be in the year 2042 when we finish this.
What? Sorry.
I said we should go back to we've never done the holy Lornography. I know we plan on doing that, and then the interrogation.
This right here is the holy Lornography.
I'm sorry, the
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail, excuse me. Blasphemy, burn me at the stake.
You like really confused me there. It's like, what are you talking about, man? That thing that we've got up on screen right now.
We should do that sometime.
Yeah.
Well, definitely, we'll have to do. Yeah, that'll be cool. Because there's so much there, and it's fucking funny as well. You know, there's not at the moment where we're going here. There's not that much humor really, but.
Well, as Tiffany was speaking, I thought it would be great if we were watching it, because in my mind's eye, she put the image right there. So.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have a break because obviously, I mean, we're gonna have to start picking and choosing segments of the chat log, because if we were gonna go at this chat log the way we're doing now and taking an hour and a half to go over one page, we haven't got enough time left in our lives, have we? You know.
Well, we wanted to go into the genesis, though. I mean, this is part of that before the pulling out his dick and all that other stuff. You know, to see how he got there.
The beginning is the most interesting to me. Well, no, all of it's interesting, but obviously we like the meeting, don't we? You know, and him figuring out what he's doing and stuff. But excuse me. I had a question then, but it's gone. I'm sure it'll come back to me. So if we we've mentioned that he says here. He's trying to put a feeler out and see if he can figure out if she's at all interested in him, because it's still a big deal at this point. He's not really got any confirmation, has he, that she's interested?
Right.
You know, all he's doing is talking to a young girl and telling her not to beware of people like him. So
in his mind, he is interested.
If she's not figured him out yet.
Yeah, but in his mind, he's there. Now he's going to, I think, isolation techniques at this point. He's got to make sure he's got a firm grasp on her. You know, only his is the only influence on her life online. You know.
I think we've got a funny bit coming up. Sorry, Tiff, go on.
Do we? No, I was just going to reiterate what you were saying, in that, you know, do you have a crush on me? Do you think I'm cute? He has to ask those questions because she's not telling him that. And he wants to know, like, are you attracted to me? Like, are you going to be interested in possibly, you know, being a girlfriend? Because that's really what he's craving at this point. He really doesn't just want to be a friend. I think that he would have gone on and on a little bit longer if she really, you know, was holding back, wasn't really receptive to that type of stuff. I think he would have continued a little bit more to see if he could crack her shell and get her to say, yes, I think you're cute. But that's the whole reason why he wanted to get on cam. He really did, even at that point, think that he was good looking. You know, he thought there were things about him because he was always wearing his hat, right? So his baldness was something that he was very sensitive about. But if he puts on a hat, he looks a lot younger. And, you know, he likes his eyes. He thinks he's a good looking guy. So he wants to get in front of that camera and say, "Oh, do you think I'm cute?" And then she's like, "Oh, yes, definitely." That's what he was looking for.
What did he see in Kayla? What did he see that made him want to have a relationship with her at this point, an hour into the chat? What did she provide to make him interested?
She's hanging in there.
She's just a female. That would be my answer to the question. She's a female who's putting up with him.
A decent female.
Yeah, because he's seen the pictures, hasn't he? So the picture that was like the thumbnail to the to this video before it came on, people will have seen the picture of Kayla in the chat, and I've seen your message, Aerodor, and I appreciate that. Don't worry about it. The picture of Kayla on the chat, she looks like a reasonably pretty 13-year-old girl. So I think he's thinking he potentially could hit the jackpot here. I think his mind could be going into overdrive, thinking what he could do with her. But of course, have we ever got any inclination of what victim number one looked like?
No.
Did we have any intel on that?
Well, we do. We do because, there was a Facebook picture of her.
Oh, well,
right.
Yeah, there was.
Oh,
in
right.
MySpace, yeah, there was something like that, but
right.
But you can't really tell.
Right. Okay. I don't want to be like. I suppose what I'm saying is, for Lorne's perspective, if he can get, I do believe that it's a good question, Shin, but in my opinion, there's a very easy answer to it. Is that she's a kid, and she's sticking in there. But to add a bonus to that, she appears to be quite good looking, and she's got something about her. I think it would make it. I think he's more interested in someone who's got that middle class to them as well. I think he's kind of. I don't know why, but he seems to revel on the fact that the fucking father's a doctor. He seems to quite.
Well, did he know at this point though? Did he know at this point?
No, I mean I'm talking about further on. Like.
Oh, okay.
I suppose at this point your question is at this point, but yeah, she's pretty. She's 13. She's putting up with his shit. I mean, what do you think, Tiff?
That's all it takes.
Yeah, I mean that is really all that it takes. The fact that he had messaged other decoys just really tells the story that this is exactly who he was looking for. There's no way that he was just running down the list and saying, "Oh, everybody and anyone who's a woman, I want to talk to you." I think he was really, I
have a question for you, Tiffany. You know how those other two decoys, as short as they were, those chat logs were very, very similar to what he's doing here with Kayla?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that he was, because they were contacted after he reached Kayla? I think they were contacted on the 21st. So
yeah, it was. I mean, more specifically, just to put a timeline on that.
The question is, do you think he was taking what worked for Kayla and applying it to those two?
Of course, it's what he was using all along, and it's what was used on all of the girls that we don't know about. So the types of conversations that he's not remembering with Disney Girl and all the others are because he doesn't remember their screen name, so he can say, "Oh yeah, I don't remember. I never did that." But he has to know in his mind that he has reached out to multiple girls just like this, and he was going to have multiple conversations that were going to be just as short. That's why he cast this big net. And what I was going to say was that if you think about the timeline of when he was talking to these girls, these other two decoys, he had already told Kayla that he was in love with her.
Yeah, I was actually looking for that issue. I think that he may have told her that night on the 21st. I think he attempted to reach at least one of the decoys around noon when he couldn't reach Kayla. And I think at that point, that's when he professed his undying, "I would die for you, 13, that not just because you're 13. And the reason why I remember that is because I think it was a reaction to him not hearing from the second decoy he tried to contact on the same day. and it seemed almost desperate.
No,
What do you think?
I don't think that that's the reason why. I think that he was going to be reaching out to these girls regardless of if Kayla was responding or not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there's no like real falling in love or anything like that. Like, I think everybody knows that he was not in love. He was in love with the idea
No, I'm
of the
saying panic.
fantasy.
No, I'm saying it was more of a panic thing.
No, I don't think that it was a panic. I think that it didn't even
what
matter.
was a panic?
The way he professed his love for her on while he was talking to the other decoys.
I think that he was just trying to deepen their relationship, or I should say, her connection
ahead,
to
guys.
him.
We'll get to that when we get to it.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Shin did it, so it's
You blame him.
yeah.
Damn it!
All right.
So quick that deflection was there. It was Shin's
That's right.
fault. He did it. So
Okay, where are we?
So
okay, so actually, after he says, "Do you have a crush on me?" He goes into, "You're so cute."
Okay, I'm okay. Smiley face. Where am I?
10:35.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you're so cute. So he wants to basically say, "I have a crush on you."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You
that,
know.
is that really that's the first, not the first exact time, but that's the less subtle time, the least subtle time he's actually made a pass at her.
Mm-hmm.
Because even at the beginning, you're such a little cutie. It's not, but this you're
Oh, yeah.
so cute.
Right. I mean, but he was just asking her, "Do you think I'm cute?"
Yeah.
You know,
That
and
whole
she was
section
like,
is
"Yeah,
major.
sure." Yeah.
That whole section is major right here, because she comes back with a hug. She comes back with "I'm glad I talked to you first."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that talk about validation.
And it would make him special too.
Yeah.
And that's really ultimately what Lauren's looking for. You know, when we were talking about his psychology before, you know, Lorne not feeling special in so many ways in his regular life, that here he's establishing that he's special. You're only talking to me. You're happy that you talked to me first. I'm trying to protect you. And I also think that you're cute.
And she went with it all, except for she didn't really say she thought he was cute. I think, what did she say? Just lull?
Yeah.
Just lull.
Yeah, she said
lull is
maybe.
enough.
Maybe.
Okay. Do you have a crush on me? This is really cringy shit too, right here.
Oh, this is what we love about it. I kind of like this when while you smoke, and then a little bit further on. I wish it's hard to quit. You know what I mean? You're damn right. You're still trying now.
But she didn't give him the crush part. But she gave him what you gave him. So you're saying there's a chance. Okay.
Right, exactly.
And then I'm sorry. He is the one who gave her a hug. She just knew what it was.
Right.
You're so cute. LOL. Still got the LOL in there.
Oh, they're all over the place.
Oh yeah.
But that one's not so bad though. Thank you. So are you? Oh, there it is. There it is. Jackpot. That's his first validation. Isn't that his first validation?
I think it is.
Aside from "I'm glad I talked to you first," which was the first one, and this is his first one romantic.
She never said that, did she? He said it, and then she did. She even.
No, she said that. She said that he goes way up top. He goes.
Are you happy you got to talk to me before
talk to
anyone
me
else?
first,
Yeah,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah, and,
well, if you skip down and you go to 10:35:18, he says, "You're so cute," and then she says, "Thanks, so are you." And he's like, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Like that was something that, like, out of the blue.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And what do you think about him lighting up on camera, like, to a young girl? I mean, that's a bit stupid, isn't it? It's not something generally I think you'd do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think maybe that could have, well, obviously he has a habit, but, also it was his way of maybe being honest with her,
I forgot he's
that
on
he
camera
smokes.
now, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because when she says, my parents say it's bad for you. And then he says, it is bad for you. So don't ever do it because it's the dumbest thing I ever started doing. Wish I never started it now, but it's hard to quit. So he's just basically acknowledging that he has a bad habit.
And then he blames it on his brothers and sisters.
And that he wouldn't be attracted to a woman who smokes, maybe. I don't know.
Possibly, but I think what's interesting about this, when he said about the brothers and sisters, and I thought it would make me look older. From what I remember, and people in the chat will probably remember better than me, but I believe that he said he didn't start smoking until he was 20.
So you want to look older?
Yeah, so I think usually, when it comes to like looking older, that's something that you would typically hear someone who's like Kayla's age, saying, not someone who's 20 already.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway.
But that just obviously smells of someone who has, who's insecure. Even if you look your age at that, you want to look older. I remember I always looked dead young for my age, and I couldn't get in bars and shit. It really fucking pissed me off. Probably a similar thing to him. I mean, he looks pretty fucking ragged now because of the life he's had. I'm a very healthy person except for smoking. No, he isn't.
Well, according to him, he is.
Shaker weight, baby. Shaker weight will keep you in shape all year round.
Yeah, but what about his warm-up exercises? He's like, it's really important doing these warm-ups, and he didn't do any.
By the way, we have to release our shaker weight video at some point.
I thought we already did. We did it on his phone, didn't we?
Yeah, I guess I have some footage I didn't show, but I was planning on handing it off to somebody who knows what they're doing. Maybe make a video out of it next to his or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, that'd be well cool.
Yeah,
otherwise, it's just raw. It's just raw footage. But anyway, if anybody's interested, let me know.
No, I was trying to get in bars. Someone who was asking before I was old enough, and I couldn't get in. And everybody did it, or tried to. And I remember once borrowing my mate's leather jacket, thinking that would do the trick, and the bouncer said to me, "Putting a different jacket on isn't going to work, pal." I was like, "For fuck's sake!"
Oh my god! Didn't you have an ID? What was the problem if you were already?
No, I was legally too young.
Oh, you were still too young. Okay.
Only by a year. I remember I went all the way down to London once to watch England at Wembley, and I was only 17, and I couldn't get in the bars in London. So we had to go back and drink in the fucking hotel room. It was like such a fucking pain in the ass. But anyway, it's the dumbest thing anyone could ever start doing. I don't know. I think chatting up 13-year-olds is fucking up there, mate. But
that's right. I would take smoking over this any day.
Yeah. But we've got. I think all of us have been smokers at one point and stopped, haven't we? Just if we want to get on that subject. Shin still has his his coping mechanism of chewing the nicotine gum.
It's a nootropic.
Which yes. Tiffany has prohibited him from doing. I mean, do you realise what you're doing to the poor guy?
No, I'm okay. I actually reached Tiffany and then I looked down and longingly sad. It wasn't in my reach. Thank you.
Excellent.
He's got what he's done is he's come prepared. He's got nicotine patches on every square inch of his body, like that scene in The Simpsons where Krusty's got them all over his body, and then he starts licking them.
Right.
There's some space on my back.
I do think I did. I just want to say I do think I did hear something not too long ago.
Yeah.
Going
Okay.
on in your mouth.
There was.
See.
Yeah, but
we talked about this.
She didn't call me out on it at the time, but I had a lozenge. Actually, it was a loose one. And,
would you find one on the ground or something?
Yes, pretty much. And I realized it was in my mouth, and I bit it by accident. And it was like in several pieces, and I was trying take it off my tongue at the same time I was talking. And I thought for sure you were going to call me out on that one, but you
Yeah,
didn't.
well, I didn't. I was really nice. I'm
Wow.
calling
Okay.
you out now.
Well, my heart's
After the
still beating
fact.
fast. I mean, in my chest. It's just,
Right.
it's over now. It's over now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
You've got a good ear. I didn't hear that, and you know how I feel about listening to people eat on the fucking internet.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Just assume she always hears everything. That's the best way to do it.
That's right. That's right. I'm always watching. I'm always listening. So yeah, I was a smoker as well. Just kind of did it socially when I was drinking and stuff like that. But it did get to be a little bit more as the time was going on. I did quit for long stretches of time, would pick it up again. But then I finally quit, and I haven't smoked in about 6 years. So, and I won't do it again.
Do you think this is bullshit on his part that he only smoked because he wanted to look older? That seems so ridiculous. I don't even know. You know, it's like he's looking for a reason that got him hooked.
I think it definitely was something, maybe because, you know, when he talks about his brothers and his sister, he talks about his envy and how he idolized them. So I think anything that they were doing was, you know, he thought that was going to make them think that he was cool. So
yeah, so it's more for that reason than to look older. I'm just wondering why you would throw that.
I think you know, the way that Lorne thinks sometimes is very
true.
After school special, like dare program, you know what I mean?
Cool is older. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So don't you want to look older? And you know, so he's going to kind of pull those things out too. That's just the way that he thinks.
Yeah. So it's weird.
But I think perhaps, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, nothing.
I think one of the funniest lines in this chat is going to be at 10:39:20, where right before that she says, "Then you should stop doing it," and he says, "I'm going to. I have to soon anyway." Perfect. Really? How many years ago is this? And he has ramped up his smoking to the point where it was 3 packs a day, to the point where he was going into prison.
What?
So, what?
What, he was doing 3 packs a day?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He was a chain smoker. I mean, you could be on the phone with him and you heard him constantly lighting up. Constantly.
I would hate to be in his apartment, man. That would be a horrible thing, especially for the
them smoking rooms at the airport.
Definitely.
Yeah. You see those? You're in like a fishbowl, and everybody's walking around you. It looks like
when I used to smoke, and I went in them. Fucking like one of the worst things ever.
I know.
Yeah.
It almost made me quit.
Yeah.
It is a comedy line that everybody can appreciate. I'm in Nashville because I'm trying to make it in country music.
Oh my god!
Nice segue from the cigarettes.
Let's analyze the fuck out of that fucking statement.
Got to give him credit though. It was a nice segue to the cigarettes that she brought up. So it was nice. He wanted to drop that line in there somewhere. That was perfect. But he did kind of force it a little bit. He kind of shoehorned that in.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he was very proud of that. You know, I'm going to make it in country music.
Make it.
So make it, yeah.
I think he actually did believe it, though.
That's such an old-fashioned term. Make it.
To a certain degree, he did. I think he did believe it.
He did. He made it. Biggest thing on NBC.
I think it's sort of the situation of where if you ever watch American Idol and the very first auditions are going to be these people who can't sing and clearly never have been able to and never will be able to. And when they tell them that and they say, no, it's not happening, they're shocked because they also have people waiting out in the lobby who are saying, it's okay, you know, she believes in herself and we're going to support her. It's like, no, seriously, she can't sing. I mean, so there's people who are going to be telling him that he can sing as well.
He doesn't need that. I don't think he needs that.
No, he doesn't. But I think, you know, the other reinforcement is his karaoke career. When he goes into these karaoke bars and people don't like boo and throw beer bottles at him, maybe that's enough to say, oh, they're not doing that, so they must really like me.
They
Or
might
maybe they
even he might even
clap.
get a good job, man, or that was great,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Because
You know,
absolutely, because I think in that type of a situation, they want to encourage people to sing. They don't want to be critical and tell them you suck. Like they want to say that was really good, come up here again, that type of thing. It's going to be a really welcoming type of environment.
yeah. I mean, even audience members, even people who aren't promoting the thing,
Definitely.
might say something like, "Hey, that was good," and especially if a woman said, "Oh, that was so sweet. That was really nice.
Yes.
Your father singing a song like that."
Yeah.
They wouldn't get into it, but that would be enough for him.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely.
he did choose to move to Nashville, didn't he?
He
So
did.
he could have, when he left. Right, you're gonna have to help me out here, and I should fucking know this. So I apologise for my ignorance. But is how far is it from Maine to Nashville?
My
I can
daughter
tell you
goes
right
to
now.
school in Tennessee, and I'm up in Boston, and it's about 600 miles. I would imagine probably about 750 miles.
Wow, so it's a big trek. So do we? I suppose the reason I'm asking is, do we think that the reason he did go to Nashville, because he could have gone anywhere really, is because he genuinely it was in his brain. See, he's not that much going on, has he? He's not
Oh,
that
I know. I have
amazing.
a theory about this, Andrew, actually. I actually have a theory
Okay.
about this. I think he chose Nashville because that was what he always told his friends, his family, or whatever, that his dream, becoming a country music star. And then at some point, whatever happened, things got really hot for him in Maine, whether it be the Betty situation, maybe it was the first victim, maybe it was, who knows what it is. But it made him leave. It made him pick up pretty quick and go. So at that point, he could have gone anywhere. But again, knowing him the way he is, it would make sense for him to let everybody think of the optics as being much more positive than they actually are. I'm not running away from something. I'm running to something. I'm running to Nashville. Remember, I always wanted to be a country star. So that's how he's going to leave it with everybody with his sudden disappearance. That's my theory on that. I,
I mean, would there have been anybody that he kept up to date with where he was going? Really?
his mother and Tony.
That's it, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
But they also would have been aware of Betty too.
yeah, but
And
Because
he
and
that's
as
the
a
reason he ran, wasn't it?
that is the reason
Let's
he
be
ran.
clear. The reason he
Definitely.
moved is because of the Betty situation. He left an answer phone
and could have been
message.
worse. There could have been worse things that were dogging him there. That's the thing. I'd always love to find that out. But let's
Certainly.
assume let's assume it's just Betty. Again, Nashville would put him in a better light than anyone, for anyone he cared about, in thinking that he was just running away from a bad situation. No, I'm running to my future. I'm running to my dream. So
Hmm.
this kind of murkies the waters for why he left, and what they call in the legal world consciousness of guilt, leaving, running, fleeing.
Yeah, I think
He
I
gets
think
rid of
that's
that.
an interesting point. I think that is part of it, and I think that he had nowhere else to go. Think about it. He's not what if he's going to pick somewhere. Where else is he going to go? Of course, he can go anywhere, but Nashville. It's like,
Not
yeah,
Washington.
Well, he did say he wanted to go back to Washington.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was one of the possibilities. But and just for reference, Nashville from Cornville is about 1,300 miles.
wow.
Um, yeah. So
Oh,
he was
Arizona.
thinking
Sorry, go ahead. Quick. Sorry.
he was thinking that he was possibly going to go to Washington. He knew he had to go somewhere because he left almost immediately after the Betty situation fell apart. I think maybe 2 weeks, something
Yeah.
like that. And he immediately started to get his affairs in order so that he could figure out what he's doing, find a place to live, because he had already secured that apartment in Nashville before he got there.
Yeah, and
Um,
there was a lot of legal stuff coming down on him over the Betty
There
thing.
was absolutely, yeah. They were sniffing around. They
Yeah.
Yeah.
were possibly things were going to happen. So, he really, to him, he didn't have any other choice but to get out of there. And so I think, because he was in this situation where his future was really just kind of a blank page.
Mhm.
He figured, I've always wanted to do this country music thing. What better time than now?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that's the reason
yeah.
why he went.
And it gives him an excuse to go out in the karaoke bars and drink and smoke and sing badly. And he
Yeah.
thinks, as we've said before, him singing in the karaoke bars is his way of getting noticed. That's his
Yeah.
plan
Yeah.
of getting
And
famous.
actively thinking he's doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see what Arodo wrote? Let's see. I think he was planning on meeting someone in July in Georgia. His MySpace survey has good info. I don't know what that. Arrow, I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah,
He wrote meeting that
I'm not
someone.
aware of that. I'd
Oh
love to know
yeah,
more.
here she goes. He wrote meeting that someone special on August 18th on the survey.
What does on the survey mean?
He did. There was a MySpace survey that he filled out where it just kind of asks questions about yourself and you just sort
Good
of fill in
point,
the
Arodo.
blanks. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to look into that further because I think that I had talked about this with someone else too, and we sort of were able to pull it together to a possible person. So
You think it's a minor?
it could be. But yeah, okay, so it's in the dump, so we'll definitely take a look at
Victim
that.
number one has been
Mhm.
long gone by now, hasn't she?
No,
Well, it could, in theory, be her, couldn't it?
it could have been her because she, according to him, she was supposed to go down to Nashville because she was going to be graduating high school and see him at that time.
Wow.
So she was still around.
So I would say she's probably the most likely suspect because... but with him, it could be something as simple as some girl in a shop was nice to him once and didn't look at him with disgust, and he imagined in his head that they were going to meet in Georgia in July. Do you understand what I mean? It wouldn't take a lot for him to write that, is what I'm getting at. His versions of meetings
Sure,
and dates
yeah,
and,
it could have.
but
Yeah.
I think that before victim number one, because sort of dumped him because we think that's what's happened, or she's ran scared, or he was stalking. There's some evidence to suggest that Lorne was stalking her, isn't there?
Yeah.
With regard to the Ferguson.
Well, that's an allegation. Yeah, I that's a whole.
No, it's an interpretation of the facts he gave us.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah,
And I think it's a reasonable inference too. I think
not an allegation because we've never spoke to victim number one, nor would we want to.
Right.
I'm originally from Maine, which we know, obviously. Cool. You know where Maine is, right? Yeah, okay, up north. Yup. Had to make sure you knew. But I should have known that you knew because you probably studied at a school.
Right.
Okay.
In geography class. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's fair. Yup, drove all the way down here. Why? How long did it take you? It took me 18 hours. Fucking hell. So that'd be about right, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
80. That's a mega. It's difficult for us to we mentioned this before, but it's difficult for us in England to comprehend such long drives because it just doesn't happen. You know, the furthest that we can drive right from the top of the country to the bottom, it's like 5 hours maximum. Well, not maximum, but if you did it in an efficient time, you could get right, the top of the border with Scotland, right down to Newquay or something in about 5-6 hours. So 18 hours is just, wow, that's just crazy. What's the longest that you two guys have drove?
I drove across country before.
I have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved it actually.
I hated it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good time of year and all that stuff. But I never thought of that, Andrew. But think about all these predators that spent 5 hours in the car.
Yeah.
4 hours in the car.
I Socks is in the chat, and he drove me from the
Maine,
courthouse back to Boston. That was about
Exactly.
That was about 2.45.
Well, yeah, we were driving pretty fast, but it's about 3 hours. You guys weren't.
That was a long drive, but it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. What really was one of the nicest You guys are lucky to live in that country, apart from your crazy president, of course. But he does come out with some crackers, doesn't he? What's all that about? Fucking disinfectant and all that. I mean,
I don't know.
Anyway, let's not get into that. We don't want to.
That's a good idea.
We don't want to get into that, do we? We don't want to turn this into a political.
Right.
Let's stick to Lorne. It's a lot easier to talk about without stirring up. Well, yeah, let's not go there. But I stopped at hotels at night though. So is that 18 hours including the hotel stops? Not that we need to go into that. You must drive really fast.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, that's
right.
yeah. Must drive really fast. Looks far on the map. Like, this is such a boring ass. Oh my god. Oh.
Well, it doesn't.
Why is he telling her he drove 10 mile an hour over the speed limit? Is he trying to come across like a bad boy?
Yeah.
Look at me. I drive fast.
Oh. Right. 10 miles is nothing.
Just when you say the conversation's getting boring, Shin, he comes
there
out
we
with
go.
his cracker.
That's exactly what I was going to say, too.
Out of nowhere. They're talking about driving and geography.
How long? Let's have a look at the timestamp, right? It's not that long after she said lol. We've only got 11 seconds from when Kayla's put a lol, and then he says, so how many boys have you kissed already? So I think he has the usual couple of minutes of boring, mundane conversation, and then he has to try and establish his position and get back to his plan and uncovering his evil plot. And then I think that's kind of what he... Do you think that he's happy that she's not got much experience? Because it would seem to be perfect for him.
Definitely. There's no question. There's no question.
I'm just looking forward to hearing from Derek.
Well, Derek never actually speaks, but...
Well, I meant hearing about Derek. Excuse me.
I love Derek.
This is lol. My ex-boyfriend. How old is he? Like 13, like me. Cool. Well, is he gonna have a go at him as well? Was he a good kisser? Like, oh, you've got a 13-year-old boyfriend. Could we get him in on the chat? Was he a good kisser? What a bizarre. Do you not think that's a fucking weird question?
Yes.
Even
well, I
for
think
him,
that
that's fucking weird. It's like dating someone and say, "Oh, how long have you been single? 3 months. Was he good in bed?"
Well, yeah. If you were wanting to steer the conversation that way, then that's what you would be saying.
Fucking weirdo.
You know. So he basically, in him asking that, he's asking her, "Do you like kissing? Did you like it?"
That's exactly right. Do you like to kiss? It's not necessarily was he a good kisser. But
yeah.
Sorry,
okay.
Was he a good kisser? Don't know because I never kiss anyone else. Lol. Did you like kissing him? Now that is kind of a tactical question, like you've said, isn't it? He's trying to he's trying to establish if she is interested in boys, whether she likes to be touched in any kind of way. I sure did, and that's quite a... I think that's the decoy playing a certain role there. She's getting into the character of someone who's would be interested in some kind of physical contact, yeah?
Yeah.
You know, because she's going to have to play, she's going to have to be submissive, she's going to have to say, yes, I will have sex with you. So, of course, if she's playing this role correctly, she's going to have to... It's a good way of her saying, not only did she say yes, but I sure did, like, it's something that she really enjoyed. Yeah. And then he comes back with the lol. It's like, basically, that is an erection, isn't it? That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was immediate. If you look at the timestamp, it's the same. So it was less than a second that he responded with lol.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, fucking hell.
Yeah, so he was ready to go.
So he was responding to her, then.
Yeah, because she said, yeah, but it's still 3 seconds though.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is pretty cool. And we know that Lorne types with one finger, so for him to write lol must have been immediately after she wrote yes.
It would have been out of character for him, because if he was doing lol to her, I sure did like kissing him. That's what she's saying. Him. It wouldn't be a lull. So the right reaction would be the next one after that. Exactly. How long ago was that? It's almost like you can see the jealousy coming out. He doesn't. There's no lull involved with that. You liked kissing him. You already told me that. So we broke up
in August. Oh, I'm sorry, sweetheart. Why did we break up? And then the decoy texts her a good
comes out of Rochelle. Yeah.
Texts her a good 30 seconds to come with a reply, which is the longest sentence that she's wrote in the chat log so far by quite a bit. And it's I think it's establishing a little bit more character, and it's also establishing that she's just involved in what generally people like her at that age are up to. Yeah, it's me. I broke up with him because my BFF told me he liked someone else, but he said she was lying. But his friend told me the same thing. I don't know. Maybe he didn't. So it's just a bit of kiddie drama.
Schoolyard shit. It's schoolyard shit, and it falls right into his wheelhouse. It falls right into where he wants to be.
And then Lorne's playing counsellor. I've just considered your response, and this is the outcome. It sounds like you've done the right thing there, Kaylee. Now, can I show you my penis?
Pretty much.
What does he say? Sounds like you might have done the right thing. Well, of course you did the right thing. For my purposes. Yeah.
It's just
what are we going to
funny
say?
That, it's like, oh, that ridiculous story that made no sense. It sounds like you've done the right thing. You can just picture him there with his, fucking counsellor's hat on in the room, pair of glasses, with the fucking fingers underneath the chin, yeah, sounds like you've done the right thing there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like he understands that school talk because again, and then the last thing he's going to say is, well, you know what, you might have gotten that wrong. You might want to give him another chance. He does exactly. And it comes out with the conclusion. Sounds like you might have done the right thing.
Tell me more about this. I think we can get to the bottom of it. Yeah. You think so? I think you might have to, but it's hard to tell without knowing the exact truth. Who's lying and who's not lying? There's some bit of wisdom there.
Everybody has to be lying. Everybody has to be lying for a breakup to happen. Everybody has to have some deception, some cheating. It can't be just, hey, I had a good run, whatever. It's got to be a lying in this case. So he's showing his trust issues right away. Mm-hmm. Correct.
And when he's saying, so where did you kiss him at? Let me guess, at a school dance. Is that just general conversation making, or is he trying to establish more about her supposed character and experience? So in other words, yes, we kissed for the first time in the hotel room in the motel when we slept together. Something like that.
It could be, but I think him saying a school dance is really, I don't know. It's kind of an old timey thing to say, I guess. I imagine those old PSAs from the 60s or whatever. You see Johnny, held Mary's hand and then they kissed at the school dance. It feels a little like that. I don't know. No one ever talks like that. Why would it be a school dance? That's just weird.
Yeah.
Quite kind of a twisted model of the world, doesn't it? You know what I mean? Obviously, it seems like on other news, Trump's a bit nuts. It seems like an obvious thing to say, doesn't it? But yeah, it's just his own crazy brain coming up with shit, basically.
Yeah,
it's like his left brain and his right brain are not kind of really communicating with each other.
And I think too, the reality of his world is kind of based on what he sees on TV. He was really into TV shows like Little House on the Prairie. He was probably into the Andy Griffith show and stuff like that. That sort of had these old time values, and the way that relationships happened on there, I think, is the way that he views them in real life.
He's so
I think
comfortable
that's why
in
he
that
comes
world.
out to that.
He really is. He's so comfortable in this world, in that high school tween world. Probably the same thing he did with his nieces and their friends, being the cool older guy, but understanding them. That's how cool he is, and he knows their lingo. knows what's customary now for kids their age, and it's like he's one of them. He's just so comfortable in this area. I don't know.
And it's funny too how when she says at my house and his house, and he's like, "What?" So he's totally.
Yeah, you're right though.
Yeah.
What's all that about?
Yeah. I think again because he doesn't expect that she would have been allowed to be alone in a boy's house to the point where they would be able to kiss each other.
Do you think he's doing some recon for himself?
I think he's getting possessive already. I think it's already taken over him where he's thinking Kayla's his and he doesn't want to think about her getting it on with boys more than maybe one kiss. So he's like, what? You kissed a boy more than once on more than one occasion in more than one location? You know what I mean?
It's just a strange string of comments about where in your house or where in your body. I don't. Yeah. It's weird. It's just such a waste of, what is that, 5 minutes?
Listen, it gets a lot stranger. Let's just go to some random part, and I'm going to skip ahead. I'm pretty sure that it gets stranger at some point. Where are we?
I just saw what color panties and bra.
Did you?
Well, I thought we'd come up to the point where he shows his dick at least. I mean, what? No, is that too much? But I'm just saying.
No, I was gonna wrap it up actually.
Okay.
Because we usually go on for about an hour and a half. We've been doing an hour and 45, so I just thought I'd skip ahead to a really weird bit. Here we go. When we fall asleep, are you going to fall us asleep with my penis in your hand? Lol.
Oh my god.
What were you saying about it being weird?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Oh. Oh my god. Oh, how do I forget that? It's like sometimes I read these things like I'm reading them for the first time. Same fucking reaction. Holy shit.
But do you know what the fucking weird thing is? He's not saying it because it's funny. He's saying it because he wants that to happen. It's a fantasy of his.
Absolutely.
He wants to be lying in bed with this kid, and this kid to fall to sleep with a penis. And
how does that work? Is there a position they have to stay in the entire night? What if he shifts over? Does he tape her hand to it? How does this work? The fuck's he talking?
Well, the thing is that she says lol and she says K, and then he's like, "Do you want to?" Because she didn't say, "Oh, definitely yes."
Yeah,
please,
he wants to affirm that fantasy so he can get off on it when he goes to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Jimmy KGB just put it very well in the chat. He's so childish, virgin for sure. This shit don't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, again, there's more things in the chat that don't ever happen. Just like when he says, "I'm gonna fall asleep inside of you." What?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can't.
Or the kitchen thing.
The kitchen thing.
You'll be stirring a pot of hot liquid, while I'm down licking your clits. And
right.
It does add weight to the virgin debate. It certainly does, but we'll not go into that on this occasion.
Okay. All right. Very good.
So, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up because it's a little bit late here and I've got work in the morning. I know you guys are pretty much getting set up for the rest of the day, but we have normal time in our country, not like your crazy land. Yeah, so I've enjoyed it. Isn't it weird? I think we was only up to page, you see the way that it is on this reader of mine, we're up to page 8 of 303. See, Lorne's theory about the chat log being edited are true. According to my document, it's 303 pages.
Right.
But it's funny because we've not done that much, and we've done over with this. This is the 4th video we've done, each one an hour and a half. So what's that? 6 hours we've done, and we've only done an hour and a half of the chat, and there's fucking a month.
They built
Rate,
the
it should be
pyramid.
done by the year 3065.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what we have nothing but time, so
Yeah.
we'll just plow ahead.
And we might sneak some things in, right, Andrew? I mean, some other ideas you might
Oh
have.
yeah, well there's the footage. We were gonna next week. We were thinking of having a just a little bit more similar to the ones that Clobbering Time has, where we just basically go over what we think are Lorne's funniest moments, but we try and establish. I think this is what we'll do next week. See if we can figure out exactly why this disgusting pervert is so funny, because it's almost a contradiction, right? You've got this guy who's disgusting. He's vile in every way you can imagine, but he's so funny. He's just so funny. How does that happen? It almost defies logic. It really is one of the mysteries of the universe.
He's the funniest thing I've ever seen.
It's like the hard problem of consciousness bears nothing compared to what makes Lorne funny.
I think, again, I know you want to save this for later, but I think the big thing is if he was doing well, say he was a billionaire or whatever, and he was acting like this, that would be fine. The fact that he's isolated somewhere and he's harmless to people, and for the most part, because people don't want to be around him, we can laugh at him.
Right.
That's my view.
But we will see if we can really get to the bottom of it next week. Bit of a change.
All right, I just want to timestamp it so that I don't have to look for this again for when we pick up again.
Where is it?
9:17, 07, 10:50, 1:08 p.m. is where we're going to pick up next time.
Gotcha.
Yep.
51.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, thanks for joining us and your valuable insight as ever, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sleep tight, Andrew.
Thank you. And guys in the chat, thanks so much for joining us. Like I said, your input and attendance is vital. Otherwise, there'd be no fucking point doing this. So,
definitely.
Thanks for coming by and fielding your questions. We hope that you've had a bit of fun. We enjoy doing these. It's really cool. So, I would hope to see you again next week. We'll do something a bit different. And I hope you're all avoiding complete boredom during these very strange times. But I'm going to do my usual spiritual do-gooding nonsense and say, please meditate. Don't drink, meditate. That's my piece of advice for the week. So, guys, thank you so much. And we will speak to you soon.